In this episode, we dive into intense subject matters that may not be suitable for all audiences. We discuss sensitive topics, and if you are sensitive to these subjects, please take care of yourself while listening. Your well being is priority. Tune in, but proceed with caution. I don't know why I did it. Hi, friends. My name is Verona, and I'm here today to share a chilling story with you about William Patrick Fyfe. I upload new episodes weekly, and today we're going to dive into this dark story of William Patrick Fyfe, infamously known as the Handyman Killer. So hang on tight and follow me down this path. Let's get into it. William Patrick Fyfe was born on February 27th, 1955, in Toronto, Ontario. When he was just a toddler, his family left. He then went to live with his reclusive aunt in Montreal when he was 3 years old. It has been said by friends that he lived as a normal child, although friends did have suspicion about him growing up. Specifics about his childhood years are kept very secretive and are only known by the investigators who worked on his case. According to Commander Andre Bouchard, the primary investigator on his case, William was married at some point in time. The marriage may have lasted 4 years. It is unknown for sure if he ever fathered any children, but William said he did. He was never able to obtain steady income, often bouncing from job to job, working as a handyman. He was described as a very, very ordinary man who happened to be very good with his hands. In 1977, at the age of 22, is when he started to get into his criminal activities. He was convicted of abduction and slander, theft, breaking and entering, and pretending to perform marriages legally. Can you imagine somebody going out there pretending to be like a priest, a pastor, and just like be like, yes, 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 I can perform your marriage. You are now legally married. Sign these documents, but it's not actually valid. What a wild. This is very random because he goes from like abduction, slander, theft, breaking and entering, and pretending to perform marriages. Like, very random. William was also charged with slander again while attempting to poison someone. William would partly blame his drug addiction on his crime, but it was never said what type of drugs he was addicted to. To support his addiction, he would do occasional robbery, and in 1989, he was charged with breaking and entering. It would just be 10 short years before he would be arrested for murder. He was a drifter living in various times in Saint Laurent, La Salle, Lachine, Verdun, and ending up in Saint Jerome in 1993. So these are all places in Quebec. I don't know if I said Verdun correctly, but I know I said the other ones right. It was around this time that he got back together with his mother. She was living in what would be described as a makeshift barn in the back of another property owned by someone else in Barrie, Ontario. It was a 2-story building off a piece of road decorated in a way that suggested nothing changed for years. Between 1979 to 1998, it is believed that he had killed several women during this time, but only a few cases are officially linked to him due to the lack of evidence. So that is an interesting fact. That for almost a decade, well, 2 decades, technically 79, 98. Some of these cases remain unsolved and are suspected to involve him due to the similar methods or patterns. Although he has not been convicted of these, It does make sense as he also fits the description of being a handyman. His first known victim that would be linked to him much later was Susan Marie Berner, a 62-year-old woman who he stabbed and sexually assaulted on October 17th, 1979 in Cartierville, Montreal. I know I didn't say that city correctly. Then on November 14th of the same year was Nicole Raymond, a 26-year-old woman who was stabbed and sexually assaulted. Nicole lived in Pointe Claire, Montreal. He would not murder again for almost 3 years when a 52-year-old woman by the name of Hazel Sculton was also stabbed to death and sexually assaulted on March 21st, 1981. The two other victims would also be linked to William much later that were deemed as unsolved between 1987 and 1989 were Louise Permont LeBlanc, a 37-year-old woman who was stabbed and sexually assaulted on September 26, 1997, in Saint Adèle, and Pauline Lemplante, a 45-year-old who was stabbed and sexually assaulted on June 9th, 1989, in Saint Adèle. The intent behind the crimes he committed remained consistent. He was seeking money. He would obtain his money from his victims by persuading them to give him their PIN number in exchange for work that was to be done. And once he had gained entry into their residence, he would proceed to appear as if he was attempting the job, and then quickly turn the customers into his victims. Then something further snapped in William, and he would begin his killing spree. His actions increased in 1999, and it finally resulted in his downfall. For many years, he had remained out of the public spotlight, silencing his sick urge as he could. But in the last few months of 1999, he became very active, killing several women in a short period of time in a very close area. It became obvious to some around that a serial killer was lurking in the area. So it's not known because William, as stated above, has kept a lot of his personal life, like his childhood upbringing, what drugs he was supposedly addicted to, and then all those other murders between 79 and 98. What made William snap in 1999? What was his trigger where he went on this murder spree? So the beginning of the end for him was when he targeted Anne Yarnold, a 59-year-old Sunnyvale woman. Fun note about Sunnyvale, I don't think I said that city right either, is a quiet town in Montreal's West Island. It's a small town. According to the 2001 census, there are less than 1,000 people living in 360 houses. It is known for its wealth and summer vacationers. It has its own yacht club, several golf courses, an arboretum, and a bird sanctuary. Relentless, violent crimes were unheard of. It wouldn't be a surprise to come home and find that you were robbed. So it's a very small, I guess, summer vacationing community for people with money, and occasionally there might be a break-in entering, and these people, while out on their yachts or their country club, came home and they were missing some jewelry, some articles of clothing, maybe a TV, a stereo. But violent crimes really did not happen in this area. This particular home invasion and robbery would unfortunately turn lethal. Anna had lived alone, separated from her husband and daughter. Many of the homes in Sunnyvale are second homes. According to her daughter Sarah, she was artistic and found fun out of anything. Up until then, William's success was that he had managed to keep everything very quiet and reasonably a low profile. All his murders were given robbery as the motive, even though the victims were all severely butchered and sexually assaulted. Anna's neighborhood, too, was very quiet, with every window in her house looking out onto trees. It was secluded and private. During the day of her October 14th, 1999 murder, she had taken her dog, Trooper, to the vet, worried about a lump that she had found on his side. The vet told her the lump might be cancerous. Her husband and her daughter both consoled her about the dog over the phone. It would be the last time they would speak to her. Anna, the 59-year-old, was bludgeoned to death by William on October 15th, the next day. His next victim was shortly followed on October 29th, Monique Garneau, a 46-year-old woman who was stabbed to death in Saint Agathe de Mont, Quebec. In November of the same year, he would stab 55-year-old Teresa Chanachan in Laval, Quebec. Then on December 15th, his last victim would be a 50-year-old woman named Mary Glenn, who was beaten and stabbed in, bear with me, Bal de Urfé, Quebec. Yeah, I did not say that right, and I also apologize for mispronouncing Teresa's last name. The names today are not with me. Not that they normally are on most days, but today's a little worse. It is noted that both Teresa and Anna had money withdrawn from their bank accounts on the same night. The ATM captured a picture of William, but it was later ruled too blurry to identify him. Although he was very meticulous about his crimes, the system managed to crack down on him during the investigation of Mary Glenn's death. During the investigation, police found DNA evidence on the exterior door frame of her home. The DNA was matched to William, which led police to issue a search warrant. With little notion on his actual whereabouts, the police contacted an ex-girlfriend of his. She informed the officers on the situation and states that he could be on his way to his mother's home in Barrie, Ontario. So, for those of you unfamiliar with the distance between Quebec and Ontario, because William does travel a lot back and forth, it appears, during this time from Quebec to Ontario, it's about 6-8 hour drive, depending how far into each province you're going. So, it is possible for him to get there within a day, stay in Quebec, as we know, because he did have family. He had his aunt up there. He, I'm sure, had some money from his crimes, from the money he stole from his victims, to stay in like motels and stuff, which are relatively cheap at the time. And then just hop in a car and drive another 6-7 hours back to Barrie, Ontario, where his mother was. The Ontario Provincial Police, fun side note of Ontario Provincial Police. The Ontario Provincial Police is also known as the OPP, is a provincial police force in Ontario, Canada, responsible for law enforcement and public safety in areas not covered by local municipal police services. It handles a wide range of duties, including highway safety, criminal investigation, search and rescue, and various specialized units. We normally just call them the OPP. You will see them a lot on the highways mainly, and then like again rural cities, like smaller towns outside larger cities who do not have a local police task force. They were on the hunt for William. Detective James Miller visited his homestead and encountered a car which was registered in William's name. The OPP were finally able to locate William on December 22nd, 1999 at a Husky truck stop in Barrie, Ontario. Husky is a gas station like Shell, Esso, Petro-Can, also known as Petro-Canada. He was placed under arrest for the murder of Mary Glenn. During the process of determining that the DNA found on Mary Glenn's doorframe was that of William, forensics also determined that the DNA was a match to bodily fluids found on 4 other victims. He would confess to only a portion of the crimes he is speculated of committing, so the exact number of his victims is unknown. However, he would later confess to several other murders, some dating back many years. I'm going to read some of the victims' names that he confessed to. And warning, there's 100% chance some of these last names are mispronounced. And I do apologize in advance. His confessions included Pauline Lamplante, unconfirmed date, Elizabeth Caramich, Elizabeth Carmichael, unconfirmed date, additional possible cases with similar patterns but remain unconfirmed due to the lack of evidence. One of these victims is Janelle Rondeau, who was a 10-year-old girl. Janelle disappeared in Montreal in 1999, and while William was questioned in June of that year in relations to her case, evidence linking him was insufficient. She remains a possible but unconfirmed victim. William's preliminary hearing was set to arise in court on November 6, 2000. Following that hearing, it was determined that there was significant evidence to proceed with a trial, and Crown Prosecutor Jean Lecourse. William would be convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder on September 21st, 2001. It was noted that during his trial, he sat in the courtroom and looked straight ahead. He tried not to turn towards the news cameras. He didn't look like anyone capable of doing what he had admitted to. He was average height, a few extra pounds. He had dark, wrinkly hair that he wore long, pulling away from a bald spot in the center of his head. Nothing so unusual, just an average-looking man with baggy eyes and a widow's peak, who you wouldn't think was a serial killer. He didn't have the charming good looks of Ted Bundy, and he didn't have the crazed 1,000-yard stare of John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, also human pieces of shit. I don't really know who's worse, but they are sick, twisted pieces of shit. Gacy, I don't know if you guys are familiar about that case. He was sick and twisted. As the daughter of one of his victims observed, I went to one of the hearings and just sat a few feet away. Sarah Yarlin said. She's the daughter of Anna Yarlin. He just looked like some pathetic little man. The head investigator in the case, Commander Andre Bouchard, called him a very, very ordinary man upon first glimpse. No one would think twice as to pass him off as a handyman. In fact, he was. He was good with working with his hands. He was good at his work. He could paint, fix things, make home renovations, a jack of all trades. But when he would knock on the door to solicit his services, he had something else in mind. If the woman was alone, she would become his victim. From the surface, William seemed to have all his wits, an organized and detailed individual. It was through psychiatric test while serving his life sentence in Quebec, it was determined that he was mentally unstable. This presence of this information played no role in the verdict. Rather, it boosted the chances of him serving his sentence in a psychiatric hospital. Although he was moved to psychiatric hospital in Saskatchewan, it was believed that he wanted to be moved out of Quebec due to the publicity of his crimes, not because of his mentality. It was also noted that the hospital would offer certain advantages which would keep him in a safer situation away from inmates. So obviously, anybody wanting to be put in a mental hospital versus a prison. So I'm not surprised that it was later came out that, oh, William had some mental health issues. A lot of these sick and twisted individuals use it because who wouldn't want to be put in a psychiatric hospital versus an actual prison? Because his victims were women, there was a higher risk of him being abused in prison. So obviously the defense team, his legal team would, everybody has their psychologists, the defense, the prosecutors, who usually have contradicting statements and reports, um, that, William, oh, he had mental health issues, he had addiction, he was abandoned as a child, type of thing. So they moved him to a mental hospital in a whole nother province. And there's a little more freedom and flexibility that do come with being in a hospital versus an actual prison. Although he openly admitted to killing of Janet Kuczynski, Susan Mary Barner, and Nicole Raymond, and Louise Permont LeBlanc, which were confessed for the sole purpose of moving to a psychiatric hospital in Saskatchewan, William was only charged with the initial 5 murders as he was already sentenced to life imprisonment. William's final death toll remains in question and will remain so until he wants it to be known. His activities span 2 decades without arrest. The murders often involve sexual assault and multiple stabbings. The victims themselves were varied in ages from 26 to 59 at the time of his arrest. The only thing they had in common was they were home alone when he called upon them. He kept his past a secret, as he kept many secrets. Part of it is that there is very little to tell. He didn't hold a steady job or a steady residence. There were very few things that linked him to a regular lifestyle of regular people. Some very simple information whined out during his trial. As of this writing, the specific institution where he is held at is not publicly disclosed for security and privacy reasons. This case remains one of Canada's most notable serial killer cases due to the prolonged period during which he avoided capture and the brutality of his crimes. His case is often discussed in Canadian true crime studies and continues to be reviewed for potential links to other unsolved cases. No one knew his secrets unless he let them know. Maybe even those closest to him were oblivious to his lifestyle. His mother, his ex-wife, even his child. Questions remain for the investigators as well. What happened between the first documented killing in 1979 and his last in 1999? Why did he start a killing spree after years of being dormant? Was he ever dormant to begin with? You guys let me know your thoughts. If there's any more new updated information that maybe has come out after this recording, I would love to know your guys' theories on this case. And that, my wonderful friends, is the infamous story of the Handyman Killer. If you enjoyed today's episode of Verona Investigates, don't forget to like, follow, rate this podcast wherever you listen. Find us on the socials for updates, episode content, and share your thoughts and theories. Your support means the world and keeps the investigations going. Thank you for listening, and as always, stay curious. Bye.